Hi, this is Natal and welcome to Mystic Mooneries. On today's video, we will be going over what it means to have the North Node in the fourth house and the South Node in the 10th house of your natal chart. If you enjoyed this video, please click like and don't forget to subscribe and comment on anything that resonates with you from this video. And so, without wasting any more time, let's get into what it means when you have the North Node in the fourth and South Node in the 10th house. Okay, um, so when we have the North Node in the fourth and South Node in the 10th, we have the polarity between complete control and complete vulnerability. So with this placement, we have the fourth house, which represents our home and our living environment, in which we grew up in, how we were nurtured, and how we feel safe in this world. It's our relationship with our mother or our maternal caretaker. The fourth house represents how we process and express our emotions and our needs. It also represents our family and our heritage. So, when you have the North Node sitting here, it would suggest that there is a lacking in these areas. There's a certain level of discomfort and unfamiliarity. Yes. Yes. So there's a level of just feeling unfamiliar with this part of your life, and that can possibly mean that a person with displacement may have grown up with a parent that was, possibly emotionally unavailable, um, and that unavailability of those parents is what would have led to their inability to nurture and provide the kind of emotional support that their child needs in order to feel um, safe in regards to their own emotions and their own, personal needs. So in this scenario, this will probably lead the child to feeling as though their emotions um, don't really matter, and maybe even feeling ashamed of these emotions to a certain degree. And as a way of making up for the lack of emotional acknowledgement from the parents, the child may have seeked other more practical methods of receiving acknowledgement and appreciation from the parents, um, probably through adopting a very responsible persona, where they would have thrown themselves into everyday tasks and chores that would have otherwise been expected to be done by the parents. Um, you could say that the child may have also like noticed that the parents were unable, um, due to either emotional irregularity or unreliability. Um, the parents may have been unable to be be emotionally responsible for the child, to the point where the child felt the need to raise themselves, essentially, because they may have realized that the kind of nurturing that they need from their parents, they are unlikely to receive. And so they may have, ended up having to grow up very quickly and face the harsh reality, and the heaviness of being the responsible one in the home. Um, and, with this kind of attitude, there's probably very little time or consideration for being in your feelings. Um, with this kind of approach to life, you know, you could have ended up teaching yourself, um, you could have kind of be more comfortable with carrying the burden of responsibility and the burden of having to sacrifice, um, your own needs, your own emotional needs from a young age. and you know, having to sacrifice a lot for the sake of responsibility, for the sake of being responsible. And you could see this as like basically sacrificing your own childhood or sacrificing your own emotional needs and wants and suppressing them to such an extent that you end up believing that your feelings and your needs are not a priority and they're not valid, and you might even adopt the attitude that, emotions themselves are a distraction from being productive and getting the task done. So, another example of how this kind of personality could develop could be a child who, may have grown up from an early age attending boarding school. So this is when you're away from the family, you're away from the mother, and you basically get disconnected from the kind of emotional support, the day-to-day emotional support and nurturing that you would otherwise get if you did live at home with your mother and your family. Um, but instead, you're kind of tossed into a very cold, um, traditional, structured environment that promotes and praises discipline and individual responsibility, um, you know, with very little space for your emotions to be nurtured. Because I mean, you're at boarding school. There's no one really that you can cry to as if you're crying to your mother. It's You're on your own basically. You're taught to be very responsible, very independent from a young age. Um, and this type of upbringing can, you know, with this placement, it creates the perfect workaholic, right? People who don't have time for emotions, suppress their emotions, ignore their emotions, are kind of ashamed and scared of their emotions, and they run away from their emotions by basically pouring themselves um, into these tasks that relates to their careers, or they approach everything, even the home life, as if it's they're in the corporate office, right? They just have this very corporate attitude um, in how they move through life. You know, um, because of this upbringing, you end up adopting the 10th house, or, I could say Capricornian persona, where you become very comfortable with um, being productive all the time, like I said. And productivity becomes like your safe space and your way of coping with your emotions, or rather, your way of avoiding them. And we could say that in the past life, since the South Node sits in the 10th house, you could say that in your past life, you may have lived a very disciplined lifestyle, with very heavy responsibilities and expectations around you and how you carry yourself. You may have been in the public eye where you really had to be careful about what you do and what you say. Your reputation, meant everything to you. Um, and whatever job you were in required very little emotional expression and a great deal of sacrifice surrounding, your own needs and your wants, and possibly having to sacrifice family time, having to sacrifice emotional connections for the sake of your career. Um, and, this could have been the lifestyle of a highly renowned political figure, for example, whose life is under constant heavy scrutiny and responsibilities on your shoulder, or even the lifestyle of, let's say, a priest or a nun who could have been expected to live a highly moral life, devoid of any emotional attachment to family, or being expected to sacrifice their own carnal desires for their higher calling. So it could have been any type of lifestyle or career that really disconnected you from your family, disconnected you from the fourth house topics, disconnected you from your emotions. And you had to do that in order to be successful in whatever it is that you were in, right? So, with a heavy Capricornian 10th house, um, either like a Capricornian or 10th house energy, these individuals can be naturally disciplined, obviously, and naturally very ambitious, very practical people, who have very little compassion for themselves and others as well, especially people that they work with or live with. They treat everything, like I said, like it's a goal that needs to be achieved. Um, it needs to be accomplished with laser focus and very minimal emotional distractions. And, with this kind of attitude that can come off as quite cold and controlling to those around them. Um, and in the home environment, they can even have a tendency of treating the home like it's a corporate office, as I mentioned before, and where they carry themselves as though they're the CEO of the home. They're pushing and telling people what to do. They're being, very overbearing and wanting to control everyone's life. Um, and most of the time, this cold approach, even though they mean well, but the way in which they conduct themselves, the way in which they go about things of trying to help their family members, it can be too cold, and it's basically devoid of any emotional um, connection in the way that they do things, in the way that they try to um, help their family members, in the way that they try to push them into being successful, and accomplishing goals. The way they go about it, it often is met with resistance because, like I say, there's lack of compassion that they, may tend to show. And you'll find that in this life, um, if they just learn to work with their own emotions and connect with those emotions and learn to be compassionate and develop empathy towards, others, they'll find that their approach will be more productive than they ever anticipated. And this goes beyond just the home life and how they conduct themselves in the home, even at work too, in their careers. They might be a bit too Capricornian to a point where um, it's not very productive, and there's a lot of resistance because um, you come off as a bit too cold. And sometimes you need to realize that in order to get people to do what you want them to do, sometimes you need to really approach that sense of leadership from a more compassionate approach and not always be so robotic and so unemotional and so the word I'm looking for, which is the opposite of compassionate. I just can't think of. I can't come up with it. But yeah, you guys get what I mean. Um, so in this life, really, as a person with displacement, in this life, you really need to um, put in a lot of work on your fourth house. Where your north node sits. You really need to work hard on developing the fourth house themes, and you can learn this by learning to connect with your inner child, learning to connect with your own emotions, and understanding that, first of all, your emotions are valid and that they have every right, you have every right to feel how you feel, and you have every right to also express how you feel. You have every right to tend to your own needs before tending to others. they need, like, you need to learn to nurture yourself and create a safe space for yourself, the kind of safe space that you were deprived of growing up. um, and you really need to learn the art of letting go of control, and by that I mean control of the self and control of others. You need to, and you need to let other people make their own decisions and make their own mistakes and let them figure things out by themselves. um, in the meantime, you need to let yourself feel the emotions you feel and let yourself be vulnerable and be honest about your fears and your insecurities. You'll find that when you allow yourself to be this vulnerable, um, you'll find that you feel so much more freedom and fulfillment and a sense of understanding between you and the other person, which ironically will make you feel safer than you could have possibly felt, by trying to ignore those feelings and acting as if you are unshakable. Um, you need to learn to love people and yourself unconditionally, because the fourth house is where you are supposed to receive unconditional love, because that's what the mother represents. When you have unconditional love, and that's how you feel safe, that they'll always love you, they'll always be there for you. And it's something that you often you might struggle with and may have been deprived of when you were younger. So you need to provide that for yourself and towards others as well. You know, um, give yourself and others a lot of grace and empathy. Empathy is something you really, really need to work on. Compassion is something you need to work on. And it comes with connecting with your own emotions first. So, yeah, another important lesson with this placement is that you need to learn to stop seeking acknowledgement and validation from external sources for all that you do, because we know that the 10th house is about acknowledgement. It's about being seen. It's about, getting accolades. It's about, sacrificing personal time in order to work on your career so you can get, all this recognition. And you're used to getting that from your past life, that's something that you could have depended on when you were younger, because you were deprived of the acknowledgement of your own emotions, and lacked a safe space for yourself. But you can get so used to needing that validation from external sources. You could get so used to that 10th house Capricornian um, type of validation. Um, and you could have this tendency of always wanting people to acknowledge how much you sacrificed for them. This could be the type of person who goes above and beyond, and then you let's say, for example, you're in a family setting, and you're like being bossy, and you want people to do things your way, and they have to follow your rules and your structure and your path, and how they can attain their goals, and they are kind of resisting it, and then you can end up lashing out at them and telling them, oh, after everything I've sacrificed for you, I do everything for you, after everything I've done, and you don't want to listen to me. Why won't you listen to me? Why won't you give me the respect that I want and just do as I say? Because I've done this and that. I've sacrificed my time and my needs to get you to where you need to be. So just, stay on course and do as I say. um, I'm just giving an example, like a scenario, and and it's like the person that you're saying this to has every right to reply and say, but nobody asked you to, nobody asked you to sacrifice all of that for me. Nobody expected you to do all of that. And they're right that that is true, and that is a lesson that you need to learn in this lifetime. Is that you don't have to do that. Nobody asked you to do that. And if you're seeking a sense of safety and validation through external sources by wanting to be acknowledged for what you do, for whether it's, for your career, for others, or the company, or whatever, if you're still seeking those external um, kinds of validation in order to, gain respect and to gain a sense of feeling like you matter, then you're not really on the right course, because you're still operating from your south node energy. And if you continue to do that, then you will meet resistance where people are saying, nobody asked you to do that, and I'm not going to give you the respect just because you say so, just because you sacrifice this and that for me when nobody asked or expected you to do that. You'll have those types of resistance, and you, even if they do give you the kind of respect that you want, um, it still won't feel fulfilling. You'll still feel like you need to keep doing more. It's like you're feeding the monster in a way, because you're not evolving, you're not developing, and by evolving, I mean you're not tapping into your fourth house energy and using that rather to find fulfillment, which is what you'll get if you um, instead seek validation and acknowledgement from yourself and not others, you know. And by that, I mean like you start to do things not because you want other people to recognize you for what you've done and for your accomplishments and for your sacrifices. You're not doing those things because you want that kind of recognition from others, but rather you're doing something because it's coming from you. It's because you're validating yourself. It's something that you wanted to do, you know. Um, you're the one that's supposed to give yourself recognition by doing what it is that you want to do. Um, because what you're doing now, if your motivation is not to be recognized by others, but for yourself, which means you're not sacrificing anything. You're just doing something for yourself and not sacrificing the things you want for others. What that then does is that it starts to feed your own emotional needs and your own emotional desires, right? And by that, you're validating that your own needs matter. You're validating that your wants do matter. And that's the kind of recognition and acknowledgement you should be seeking, not the external, but the internal, right? Because you've forgotten about yourself for long enough now. You've sacrificed yourself and your needs for long enough. It's time now to do things to make you happy. The time for sacrificing your own needs and your wants for the benefit of others is done, right? In this lifetime, it's really it's your turn to tend to yourself and your needs and your wants and your feelings. You need to stop invalidating your needs and your desires and respect them instead by basically nurturing or taking care of yourself, by taking care of yourself in the way you wish you could have been taken care of as a child, but for whatever reasons you were deprived of for the sake of responsibilities that needed to be carried through, right? So you need to also create a home. It includes creating a home for yourself that becomes sort of like your sanctuary. It becomes a place where you feel safe and nurtured, a place where you can be yourself. I know that, that you matter as well, but first you need to learn to connect to those feelings by allowing yourself to feel them and not judging yourself for how you feel or that you feel at all. You need to remember that you are human and you need to allow yourself to be a human in every way. You'll find that when you lead with compassion as well and empathy in all areas of your life, in all the connections that you have, whether it's personal, professional, you'll be able to get further along with your goals and feel more fulfilled and at peace with your soul in this way. So, yeah, I hope that that resonates and, it makes sense for most of you. And please let me know and comment down below what you guys think about this reading or about this interpretation of the North Node in the fourth house with the South Node in the 10th house. I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you for listening.